Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Pan-African Traders podcast, where I interview players that are in the international trade space. Today, I've got Kinglsy. Kinglsy is another gentleman I met on Clubhouse, and we've just spoken offline a couple times about his business and his history in the sort of international trade in insurance, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, we're just going to be talking today about his history, how he got into the space that he's in, his current projects, and any other information that he thinks will be quite interesting for any of the listeners today. So welcome, Kinglsy, to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Very well, Malabi. Thank you very much. Pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Welcome. You mentioned that this, when we were talking offline, actually, that you were Cameroonian based in Germany. So how did that work? How did you get there?
My journey to Germany is a long one. So many years ago, when I left my country, I went to England to study. So I spent my uni days in England, and I started working for a shipping line in London. And my role was, I was working in the legal department. So we were responsible for fending off claims coming from cargo owners and insurance companies around the world. I moved to Argentina a couple of years later, and while in Argentina, I switched sides and I started working for insurance companies, but also for international traders across the Latin American continent. So we were handling claims for them against shipping lines, airlines, and freight forwarders. 4 years later, I moved to South Africa. And in South Africa, I started learning the business from an African perspective. So my mission really was to understand the challenges from an African perspective. What were the African traders going through? What were the challenges that insurance companies on the continent were facing? And during that time, I met my wife, who had flown in from the United States. So we got married in South Africa, and then we moved to Germany. And that is how I got to be here.
That's fantastic. That's a really interesting story. So you've been about the place. You've been to the 3 continents, working professional in 3 different continents, which is really interesting. Not a lot of people can say that. So I guess I just wanted to break it down for the layman, right? You're speaking about insurance and working on both sides of the coin. Can you just explain to people what I believe you call it cargo insurance? What is it? Maybe if it's different from other types of insurance, and who are the parties involved, and how is it connected? So from the freight forwarder side to the insurance side to any other parties involved. Just try and explain and really simplify for the audience how the insurance part of international trade works.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So I'm going to answer your question by giving you a scenario. Imagine that you're exporting or you're growing ginger somewhere in Nigeria, and you're exporting it to the Netherlands. Now, most people in Africa would load up their ginger in a container and ship it off without insurance. But where you choose to use insurance, the insurance company would underwrite the risk involved in transporting your cargo from the first carrier. So if you're in, let's say, I'm not sure, I don't know, northern part of Nigeria, and you're moving your cargo down to Lagos, to the port, then the insurance would start covering your ginger from the first carrier all the way from up north down to the port, and eventually to the carrier, to the buyer. So cargo insurance really is insurance for the transportation of cargo and the risk involved in moving that cargo from one place to the other. I think I'm being oversimplistic, but there are various forms or types of cargo insurance or extents of coverage. So you have, for example, goods in transit, which would cover your risk inland. You have what you typically call marine insurance or cargo insurance, which would cover inland, including sea and air. But based on the policy that you're taking, or based on the coverage that you've taken, the insurance company will typically specify if it is a port-to-port coverage, or if it's a place-to-place, and also the type of international sale that is involved could as well determine the type of insurance cover that you get. So, but I don't want to go too technical or too nuanced. Cargo insurance is really just insurance for the risk involved in moving cargo from one place to the other. And the second limb of your question, I think, was who were the parties involved, or who are the parties involved. So you have the cargo owner. I'll say, let me put it this way, you have the cargo interest, and the cargo interests are those that are either involved in growing the cargo. So you have the grower, you have the grower, a local guy in Nigeria will grow the cargo, but if they don't have the international connections, then they'll sell it on to like an aggregator who's an exporter. So this guy, this exporter would likely be the one to take out insurance. Depending on the market, I think in Nigeria, there's a strong use of brokers, although they're also direct line business. But where there's a broker, this exporter would get in touch with a broker. This is an insurance broker who would then arrange for insurance cover for that cargo with an insurance company. So an insurance company could be in Nigeria. There's Allianz in Nigeria now. I think there's Fidelity. I'm not sure. There are a few others which I'm missing the names at the moment. But this broker will get in touch with the insurance company and say, hey, I've got this goods moving from Nigeria. These are the terms. This is the type of coverage I'd like to take. On the side of the insurance company, you have the underwriter. The underwriter is the person who's going to then engage with the broker to agree on the terms of this coverage. And once there's coverage and there's insurance coverage for this cargo, is then moved on from the exporter to either a freight forwarder or directly to the shipping line. So a freight forwarder would be a representative of, they could either be independent or they could be a representative of the carrier, but basically their role is to arrange the shipment from the exporter and pass it on to the carrier. In certain cases, freight forwarders would own their own trucks. In others, they would just subcontract to other trucking companies. So from northern Nigeria, you've got the exporter, then the broker, the underwriter, then the first carrier, who's the trucking company, then you've got the freight forwarder, eventually the shipping line. And I'm skipping here the port terminal because that just makes it a little bit more complicated. So you've got the shipping line, then once it gets over to the other side, you get a reverse process until it gets to the shelf or the final consumer.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You really explain that in a very simple way, and that's good. I'm sure people will kind of get an understanding before we dive deeper into this. So when I look at freight forwarding, when I'm looking at the example that you gave me with the ginger grower or exporter, in my mind, I'm always thinking anything to do with logistics, my freight forwarder can handle it, right? So I guess my next question is, do people often reach out to an insurance company separately from their freight forwarder, or do they normally go through their freight forwarder and say, hey, can you help us sort out the insurance thing? I want to be completely hands off, just sort it out for us?
In some markets, they do. In some markets, people assign this role or this task to freight forwarders. But in other markets, recently, not in a distant past, in a market like South Africa, freight forwarders were stopped from doing that because offering insurance services in any form is a financial service advice, and you need to be qualified to be able to do that. So in some markets, freight forwarders can no longer do that. But I think in others, freight forwarders can assist. And the assistance here really would just be, oh, I know a broker or I know an insurance company. But in some markets, you have a freight forwarder who would offer insurance cover as part of the way bill or house bill of lading, where, if you're entrusting their cargo for them, then there's usually a checkbox which says, yes, I want insurance, or no, I don't want insurance. Now, if you check you want insurance, then they'll use their resources to get you insurance coverage for the cargo. But short answer, it does happen, but in some markets it's prohibited.
Okay. So, I guess that kind of also leads on to the idea: this insurance, is it necessary? Is it compulsory in certain countries, or is it an entirely optional thing for people to get?
Again, it depends on where we are. So in many African countries today, importation into the country is obligatory for insurance to be taken out within that country. So this applies in Kenya, in East Africa, and most recently in Ghana, where importers are obliged to take insurance within the country once the cargo reaches the port of the country. Unfortunately, many African countries, exporters in many African countries, they would export on FOB. FOB is free on board, so they sell their goods without insurance. And so whoever is buying the goods from abroad will typically take out insurance in the foreign country, which I think is really it's an unfortunate arrangement. And the reason I say it's unfortunate is because that's opportunity that's been transferred away from the continent. And when you sell your product without insurance, then you're giving an opportunity for a foreign insurer to leverage the labor of the Africans who have grown this product, or who have developed this product, or who have dug up this product, and the risk is now transferred to Europe. I think insurers on the continent should be able to, one, try and understand these risks, but also be bold enough to pick up some of these risks. In my opinion, I think governments or financial regulatory bodies across the continent should be ensuring that these cargo are they're only exported with insurance, or they're sold on a CIF term, so that's cost insurance and freight, such that the value from the insurer stays on the continent.
Wow, that is super interesting. I never thought about that. And when I tend to export products, I always talk about Ex Works. For people that are not familiar with these terms, I'd suggest looking into Incoterms on Google. But Ex Works just basically implies that as an exporter, the person that's buying the goods from me is going to basically handle the cargo as soon as it leaves my warehouse. So they're going to take it to the port in my domestic country. They're going to handle the insurance, everything until it gets to their front door. And so what you're essentially saying is that if, as Africans, as exporters, we shift the responsibility and take a bit more of that responsibility on, it's going to create more business for the insurance companies in Africa, create more jobs, and thus more wealth, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a really interesting point. I never actually thought about that. So I'm going to be considering using different Incoterms now. Okay, that's great. And so you mentioned that you went to different parts of the world. You've worked in Europe and in the States and South Africa. I'm quite keen to learn more about what you learned from Africa. Some nuances, some differences, some things that are unique to Africa in your space. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that there are many. The first one is really just what we're talking about, the Incoterms. Unfortunately, other than South Africa or Southern Africa and some of Northern Africa, most countries in Africa, they trade on FOB or Ex Works, basically just transferring these opportunities to foreign countries. That is the first thing. The second thing which I found on the continent, which again was quite disheartening, is so Africa as a whole does not own a single liner. The last one that we owned was Submarine, which was owned by South Africans, and this was sold off to Maersk. So there's not a single shipping line on the continent. There are various international conventions that apply to the carriage of goods by sea. You've got Hague rules, Hague-Visby rules, Hamburg rules, and Rotterdam rules. Rotterdam rules have not yet come into effect broadly, just because they haven't reached the core of the number of people to sign up to it. But the reason I say that is Hague and Hague-Visby rules were developed largely by vessel-owning countries, and it is heavily biased toward vessel owners. So that means the terms, the clauses, the rules are such that it protects the interests of the carrier. When you look into Africa, some African countries are signatories to that rule. And I'm asking myself why. Because many countries in Africa, we are largely cargo owning or cargo exporting continent. We either export or import goods. So why the hell are we subscribing to Hague and Hague-Visby rules when we could subscribe to Hamburg rules? And I'll just give you a very brief difference between these two to emphasize my point. Under Hague and Hague-Visby rules, you have a 1-year time bar within which, or prescription period within which you must bring a claim. And under those conventions, typically it would require, it require that you bring a claim in the jurisdiction or the head offices or the choice of law of the carrier. And that would typically be in London, in Marseille in France, or some other foreign jurisdiction where Africans have very limited access to. Now, with Hamburg rules, on the other hand, it gives you a 2-year time bar. And then it says that you are at liberty to bring a claim either at the port of loading, so that is either in Nigeria, or if you choose, in the country of discharge or country or the head office of the company or the shipping line in question. So you could either take it to London or you sue in Lagos. Now, you as an exporter, if you had a claim against the shipping line, where would you rather sue if you had the option?
Yeah, in your own jurisdiction.
There you go. So yeah, those are some of the unfortunate things that I realized on the continent. We are advocating for that to change. I hope we can garner enough voices around this. I think that we should be able to come together as a continent and change it, and that does make sense to us. So yeah, that's the other one. I think the other unfortunate thing that I realized was, so across the continent we've got people that are very capable of doing what we do. So whether they are surveyors or lawyers or transporters and the like. And many countries around the world are quite interested in doing business with Africa. But many people are not aware of Africa. Many people are not aware that you exist. Many people are not aware that I exist. So they don't know that there are people on the continent who are capable of doing certain things. So what they tend to do then is they go to foreign countries. I don't want to name names because I don't have any bias against these countries, but they go to these countries and they are Africa experts in these countries who acquire the business, then they outsource it to an African to deliver on the project. So they could acquire the business in the foreign country for X amount, and then by the time it gets to the expert on the ground, you're getting about 1/5 of the amount which has been paid to the foreign company. But you are the one delivering on the service. Then they'll take the work that you've done, place it on the letterhead, and then deliver it to the client. And I'm asking myself, with technology, why don't you disintermediate everyone else and deal directly with whoever has the business? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Some of the things that I thought are rather unfortunate on the continent. There are quite a lot of them, but I think we haven't got there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and then this is why we're having these discussions, because I want to put it out there in the ether. I want people to listen to this, and because with any challenge there's opportunities. So I hope that people can pick up these individual things. We might not get someone that's starting their own liner overnight, but we might have people that sort out the lower hanging fruits and then go from there. But some really, really interesting insights there. Especially when you mentioned the two different rules that are at play. So are you saying that some countries go by the Hamburg, some countries go by others? So how does a country choose? Does like Nigeria, for example, can we say, oh, we want to go by Hamburg rules now? How does that work?
Yeah, you can. So it's just like any international convention. The country needs to ratify it. Well, they need to sign it, ratify it, and then they internalize it. So it becomes local law. And there are certain countries that have gone through that process. The case of Nigeria is a little bit nuanced. Nuanced because Nigeria has signed the Hamburg Rules, but it has not ratified it. Even though it has not ratified it, aspects of Hamburg Rules apply in Nigeria in certain cases. And the distinction, I think, is for goods, I think the case law on this topic describes it as incoming bills of lading. So for incoming bills of lading, that's shipments into Nigeria, the Hague Visible Rules do not apply.
Okay.
For those that are going out of Nigeria, the Hague Visible Rules will apply. So it's a little bit nuanced. For Cameroon, for example, is signatory to the Hamburg Rules. But you also have regional markets like, what is the name? Is OHADA law, which is the Organization for the Harmonization of Business Laws in Africa, or French, I think is Organisation pour l'harmonisation des droits d'affaires en Afrique. That law is basically, as far as transportation or carriage of goods is concerned, that law is basically a replica of Hamburg Rules. So there are certain aspects which have just been lifted up and placed in the OHADA Convention. So many countries that are signatories to the OHADA Convention would then apply their local law, which is akin to Hamburg Rules. Then on the other hand, you have countries like South Africa. South Africa is not a signatory to Hamburg Rules. And you could say, understandably, because South Marine used to be a South African shipping line, but it's no longer the case. You have many Southern African countries that they would apply Hague rules, Hague and Hague Visible Rules, as opposed to Hamburg Rules. Some Northern African countries like Egypt, Morocco, I think Egypt and Morocco, they apply Hamburg Rules, but again, it's nuanced in the way they have taken it into their local laws. They have some exceptions. Kenya on its side, or in East Africa, you have a mixture because Tanzania applies Hamburg Rules, while Kenya applies Hague and Hague Visible Rules, Hague or Hague Visible Rules.
That's brilliant. So I mean, the long and short of it is that there's a bit of a mix and match, but the awareness needs to be there so that the right stakeholders can actually start moving towards the Hamburg or the one that actually suits African countries better. So that's pretty interesting.
Exactly.
So and now that you've kind of set the stage on cargo insurance and the industry, I would love to learn more about optimiz. What is optimiz? What do you guys do? What problem are you solving?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So optimiz, really, we are digitizing the cargo claims process. To expand a little bit on that, you remember this guy who is exporting ginger from Nigeria to Europe. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the buyer in Europe would say, the container that I've received is not of, it's not the grade that I expected. The seller in Nigeria on their side, they know that they have, done their best to export that container, and they are not really sure if the buyer is saying the truth that the container arrived with damage. But what are the options today? For the guy in Nigeria, he would have to pay a qualified surveyor in Europe to go out and inspect the container once it arrives, in the Netherlands. Now that would be about €1,000 that he has to cough off his pocket. What is his margin on that container? So often they'll be like, because he hasn't got the wiggle room to appoint this surveyor, he will say, okay, deduct 10%, deduct 20%, to shoulder the losses because he wants to keep that commercial relationship. So we thought, if we could empower this guy to be able to collect this information remotely, but also objectively, then we could significantly first improve his bottom line. We would streamline his processes, and overall, if it's a creditworthy or a trustworthy buyer, then both sides should be on good terms because they can now both have the same sort of truth, the same information about the cargo pre-shipment and post-shipment, and all of this information is collected digitally. So about this tool is a web-based mobile application where we have defined certain steps which a shipper, so a layperson who doesn't understand what is required of him will just need to follow the descriptions as designed in the application, both the shipper and the buyer to collect information. And all of this information is automatically transformed into a dashboard where the interested parties can see that this was the quantity of the ginger in Nigeria. This is the number of bags of ginger that was loaded in Nigeria. This is the grade of ginger that was loaded in Nigeria. And the guy in Nigeria can also see this is my container when it arrived in the Netherlands. This is the amount of shrinkage that occurred. This is how I can actually see it, So, and what is really interesting about that service offering is we work on a subscription basis, right? And if you were to, come in at the lowest tier, you will have access to up to 50 inspections for 250 euros a month. What that means is the cost of an inspection is really about 5 euros. So compare that to 1,000 euros in 5 years. And you see that is the value proposition for the cargo owners is quite strong. Now, there's a second aspect to the solution that we provide. If after collecting this evidence, it turns out that there's actually damage to the cargo in transit, then we want to be able to empower the guy in Nigeria or whoever has interest in this cargo to be able to manage a claim against the responsible party. And this could be a shipping line, an airline, or a freight forwarder. So before now, your option would have been to contact a lawyer who would bill you per hour, or you'd contact a recovery agent like the first company which I started, which depending on where you are or depending on the quality of the service, it could range anywhere between 15 to 30%. But on our system, it ranges between 5 and 10%. So, and the way that we can achieve that is by leveraging predictive algorithms to guide you on how to manage these claims with case laws and things like that, so that you can, handle this claim by yourself without outsourcing it to a third party.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I can definitely see the problem, the customer that has the problem, and how you're solving that problem. So on a very practical basis, right? I'm the ginger supplier. So when I'm ready to export the goods, do I take pictures of the goods and put them on the app and stuff? Like take data and say, okay, this was at this level. So it's like, do I need a smartphone to be able to do it?
Yeah, you need a smartphone, but I mean, you don't need an iPhone or something like that, right? You just need the internet connection. So we have designed the application such that you don't have to download the application on your phone. So it's a web-based application. And once you have harvested your ginger, you want to start collecting. So the type of data that we collect is a combination of photographs, short videos, structured text, and in the background, we are measuring location, time, and very soon we'll be looking at temperature as well. So all of this data is collected at various stages, and it tells a very solid picture of the handling and quality of your produce before it goes into the container and eventually onto the ship.
Okay. One thing that kind of popped to my head, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but with the kind of technology that you're using, you're actually, tracking things along the way, like in UK or whatever, or wherever you have tracked parcels online. So are you looking to go into that space of like tracking the shipments, or you're just kind of using your data specifically for the insurance side of things?
So we will not go into tracking. I think you must have heard people say this, the way forward these days is partnerships. So we are partnering with the guys who are providing these tracking devices. One of our partners, which we are working with at the moment, is Delta Track, and they provide temperatures like a data logger that you place in the container, and it will track, the various, like the temperature, humidity, light, and all of that shock from one point to the other. So we integrate to their service such that whenever there's a spike in temperature or there's an anomaly in transit, then we become aware and we can automate the rest of the process. So we don't want to go in that space, but we want to be close to those guys.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. There's no need to reinvent the wheel, and you can just plug and play with the right partner. So that makes a lot of sense. So I mean, in terms of your business right now, what stage are you at? Have you launched it? Have you got customers? Are you still in the building phase? Let's learn more about what stage you're at.
So we are early stage. We do have some traction. We have some customers on the continent, but also in Europe. So we've got a customer in Switzerland, in Spain. We are starting a pilot with one of the largest freight forwarders with their offices in Colombia. We just picked up a very a big client in South Africa. Then we've got another in Ghana. So we are picking up customers here and there. But we are definitely at an early stage. I think there's still a long way to go.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, I've learned a lot from this conversation. I feel like we need to do a part 2. But I like to keep the podcast short and sharp so people can actually digest the information. They don't lose focus and they can take it away and have something that they can learn from. So I mean, thank you very much for, explaining your industry, for explaining your business, your solution. It's been very, very interesting. I guess, next, I would love to hear how people can reach out to you, how they can learn about it. Is it optimiz.com? How can they learn more about Optimiz?
It's optimiz.claims. So Optimiz with a Z, no E, so OPTIMIZ. .claims. That's the website. If you wanted to get in touch with me personally, my email is king@optimiz.claims, and you can reach me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you are, I am. So yeah, let's link up.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Kingsley, there's not much else to say. I mean, I've really, really enjoyed this episode. I've really learned a lot. There's so many gems in such a short amount of time that I'm going to be looking deeper into. So thank you very much for your, contributions. Do you have any final words, anything to say to the people before we round it up?
No, just if your listeners are international traders, I think with the passage of the Africa Free Trade Continental Area, we expect to see business increasing on the continent, and we should be smart about it. Otherwise, just like before, we are going to sit by and watch the opportunity be siphoned away to other areas. So I think the watchword again is collaboration. We need to collaborate and partner to make sure that, as you rise, you lift others up. Only then can we progress. Otherwise, yeah, it's not even worth the trouble.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Because a lot of other communities, they collaborate, they work together, they put their egos to the side. So it's something that we definitely need to do more. But I've been seeing more and more of it recently. So I'm definitely encouraged by what I've seen on different platforms. So I think it's a new day, it's a new age, and we're going to be doing some really interesting things. I can see both of us working together on some stuff as well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks again for joining me on this podcast episode. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you very much to the listeners for listening. It's Malobi, the Pan African Traders podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Cheers.
Cheers, Kinglsy. Bye.